Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of The Secret Origins of Mint Condition. I am one of your hosts today, James, and it's time to feel the magic and hear the roar because the Thundercats are loose. And today we're talking about all things Thundera. We're talking about Third Earth's most famous residents, the Thundercats. And to join me to do that, I've assembled another expert pop culture panel. So first up is our resident pop culture professor, returning friend of the show, Professor Jack Adrian is with us.
Hello, thank you.
And also joining us today, he is the co-host of the Star Trek edition of the show and a pop culture expert on all things, I think. John Whittemore is here.
Apparently the spirits of evil have dined to bring me to you today.
And also joining us, making his second appearance on the show, he's a pop culture expert in general, with his main expertise being in the realm of Cybertron. Keith Bethon is back with us.
James, ho!
Ho! And joining us for the first time, making his premiere appearance on the podcast, a person I could not do this episode without, a person who bleeds pure Thundranium, is joining us. Kevin Lafari is on the show.
Hello and ho!
Very nice. I like all the hoes. We'll have to say that also for the end. We'll have to say that for the end of the show too. When we
yes, definitely.
We got so much to go into. We were already diving into it before the podcast started, so I was like, we got to get the mics going right away. I don't want to lose any of it. But Kevin, since you are the first time on the show, I'm going to turn to you first. Given the fact that the 80s gave us so many cartoons to choose from to be popular franchises that still live on this day, why is Thundercats your favorite?
It influenced me in two ways. First, it enhanced my sense of and love of the weird, because everything's weird on Thundera and Third Earth. Not that I was like a feral child, but Code of Thundera gave me my foundational morals. So it was very hugely influential.
Wow. And just for the audience, can you recite the Code of Thundera?
Justice, truth, honor, and loyalty.
Very nice. Very nicely done. Fantastic. So let's jump around a little bit also. So Jack, being the senior member of our crew, the Jaga of our crew, what were your thoughts about Thundercats?
Thank you, James. No, I think Kevin gave an excellent introduction. In many ways, I think coming off of G.I. Joe and Transformers, Thundercats was this kind of whole new idea, the anthropomorphization of hero and animal. We can talk about where that would go later on, but it was exciting. But I also agree with Kevin. None of it made any sense. A part of you that didn't care, but there's a part of you that almost wanted to grab onto a little world building, a little continuity, something that made you say, okay, I kind of get what's going on. They would give you nothing. But nice visuals. And the theme song, the theme song, I'll just leave it there.
It is the best.
Yes, it is a standout theme song from all of the other cartoons at the time. It is one of the standout theme songs. John, let's go to you. What are your thoughts about Thundercats?
It was part of that whole, series of 80s cartoons that I was obsessed with as a kid. I mean, it had, I don't know why particular memories come out at me, but it got to me because I was watching it one afternoon, I guess, and it must have been right in the middle of December because it was super dark at like 4:30 p.m., completely dark outside. And those end credits, the beginning credits are great, but the end credits between that like spooky, like I think there's like a spooky like tree and a lightning and music, which is so 80s. It had me like terrified but completely enraptured, and I became obsessed with Mumra from that point onwards because I wanted to. As for some reason, as a little kid, I wanted to understand what his deal was and how he transformed and what the point was. And never got any real answers, by the way, at least that I remember. But that was like one of those major things. I was like, yep, 80s cartoons, all of them, and this had to be added into the repertoire. And then, of course, got all the toys. So.
Yeah, I will. We will have to dive into this because I want to get Keith's thoughts first. But like, Mumra is technically is he like an original Egyptian god from Egypt that's been around for 3 generations of Earth? These are all things I guess we can dive into. But Keith, being the fact that your Transformers was number 1 for you and Thundercats is sort of a rival 80s cartoon, how much did you dive into it back when it was on?
I dabbled. Obviously, Silverhawks was so much better than Thundercat. No, I'm just
Oh,
kidding.
fighting.
It's like saying GoBots is better than Transformers. No, yeah, I thought I watched a bunch of it, just catching it on TV, but after rewatching it, I realized I think I only really saw the first season, which there's a lot, but I don't I never remember seeing like the Lunatics and all that. So it was good, and there are a couple things that struck me even as a kid. Like the music was just awesome. Like people had their own little personal theme songs that would pop on when they, were shown on the screen. Even vehicles sometimes got their own little theme song. So like that was cool because they didn't do stuff like that on Transformers. And the other thing was Chitara was a hottie. Like Transformers, they gave you one female Autobot maybe sometimes, but Chitara was there all the time, and like that was nice. So.
Yeah, the theme music is very good. I didn't realize. I mean, I'm sure Kevin, you were familiar with this, but the theme music is like, I was like, when I was rewatching all the episodes for this podcast, I found like the complete soundtrack on YouTube. I was like, wow, every theme is like a 2 or 3 minute theme that somebody wrote out and composed and was for specific moments for specific characters. I mean, they did recycle it over and over again, but it was all the individual music is really good.
Yeah, it's excellently written. I don't know of any other cartoons of the era that did that. So I think it stands out quite a bit there. And also the music was actually well composed. So
yeah,
it was well done. So Jack, I'm going to get back to what you brought up when you were first talking about it for all of us to weigh into. And it's the thing also that kind of drew me to doing this podcast at some point is your problem with what is actually, or where are the Thundercats, I believe is what your problem is. Like you don't understand where they are, what's going on. Maybe you can elaborate more, then everyone else can weigh in on a little bit.
Well, so Thundercats is kind of one of when it came out. You started, and fundamentally, only the first 5 minutes of that pilot episode make any sense. It's cohesive, you get it. They are refugees. They are leaving this planet Thundera. Bad things happened. Mistakes were made, and so here you have a last ragtag group of Thunderans on their way into the darkness that is space, and once Jaga kind of finds and he plots his way and he has to sacrifice himself, go Jaga. We can get into his crimes later.
Yes.
But once Jaga kind of sets the autopilot and you land on third Earth, air quotes, nothing after that makes any sense. It is fundamentally just completely crazy.
It's a fever dream. Yeah.
Absolutely. It's a fever dream on meth, while you are kind of, just doing like a mainlining, or you're doing like this just the side of fentanyl, and somehow or other this all kind of comes together, and it's just like, whoa, the universe is revealed to you. You've got, I'm just to run a few things off. Third Earth, the rest of the Thundercats, though maybe you noticed it or not, they were totally nude, and now they have clothes. Lino has aged, although Wily Kit and Wily Cat, who were roughly approximately the same age, remain the same age. And so that's going on. You are formally introduced into the power and the impact of the Eye of Thundera. And then Mumra. Okay, Mumra. And then you've got the mutants. Again, they were being chased. One could argue echoes of Battlestar Galactica, the Cylons. I don't know. You tell me. None of it is cohesively internally consistent. It's just kind of like, why not? I think going back to Kevin's point, Keith's point is then you get to season 2, and they go even further off the rails. And so it almost relished in the fact that, you know what, we are never going to give you a moment of peace. We're never going to give you a sense of consistent world building. We're never going to do anything that makes sense because, you know what, man, that's not what this is about.
But, and Kevin, you were speaking about this before we went live with the mics, like there is some continuity within the show.
An amazing amount for an 80s cartoon. There's they reference other things that happen in different episodes, even different seasons. They bring back some minor characters randomly, whether that's cost cutting or not, I don't know. But it was nice seeing continuity, even if it's all bizarre.
It's no more bizarre, I think, than some of the fever dreams and Transformers in the movie, to be perfectly honest.
True.
We talked about that in great length on that episode about how a lot of that movie seems like it's a drug-induced state of its time.
Yeah,
it's just,
certainly.
That was one movie, and this was, how many episodes is it in total? It's 130. 130 episodes in total, Fever Dream. So,
yeah.
But I do appreciate the continuity, though. it surprised me rewatching it that there was continuity, because thinking back at the time, it seemed in my head like Masters of the Universe. I don't remember having any continuity. That's unfair. I've not rewatched Masters of the Universe, or it could be, but I think of everything in the '80s like it was an episode at a time, not like the continuity we get today with shows and movies and stuff like that.
Yeah, I was also surprised by how. So I did a whole rewatch. I didn't remember that there was so much continuity. And again, like with Masters of the Universe, I haven't seen it since it was on. So but I also perceive that as being very, very just in its own box for every episode. But I liked about this is that while there is no like character growth, there was some continuity, and then also like a little character growth with Lionel. When he's first there, he's a little bit of an incompetent leader. And by the end, he is giving commands and actually competent, which is kind of a nice story arc for him. Though how he got to be an adult from the sleeping pod, I still don't know. Jaga just says one thing of, oh, aging does occur. But no, it doesn't. It didn't do it for anyone else. So
no, I mean his pod wasn't damaged or anything, right? Because I did rewatch most of the first season, and we're getting ready for this episode, but I don't think they drop a line like his pod was damaged and Wile E. Kids and Wile E. Cats was not. I think he just aged for some reason, right?
I was looking into this, and the only thing I can find is that yes, he just aged. It's never really explained away, but in one of the comics from the 2000s, they say that his pod was damaged, which makes sense. It's kind of a retcon, but yeah.
Yeah, maybe that's what I'm thinking about, because I did remember reading some of the Thundercat comics at the time, which I think was one of the longer running comics of cartoons at the time. I think Thundercat comics went on for a long time, longer than some of the other stuff that they put out.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah. Well, John, let's go back to something you brought up in your original thoughts, Mumra. So what do you think about Mumra, John? Because I know you said you had no idea, but what were your thoughts, or what are your thoughts about Mumra?
So I was trying to rethink about why, what in the show stuck out to me the most. And I think, honestly, being like, whatever, 7, 8, 9 years old at the time, you know how with those toys, you didn't necessarily know how you got them. Your parents just bought you one of them because your parents had no idea what each one meant. They just saw one and got it for you.
Yeah, I had a Sectars tar like that. Still don't know what that is, but...
Sectars was awesome. That's a whole other show.
They didn't watch the show. They didn't know which one even was necessary. They maybe they knew your favorite, but beyond that, so they had gotten me the Mumra toy. I don't remember having more than maybe one or two of the other Thundercats, and I don't think I had Lion-O, but I had Mumra. So, and that was an intense toy. This was in his ever living form. His like,
Dark Ultimate Warrior from WWF.
Badass mummy with a mini skirt. That's, I mean.
I literally thought that as a kid. I'm like, he's sort of wearing a skirt, but he picks up his asses.
It's a kilt.
So from then on, I felt kind of bad for him. I was like, he just tries every time, and all he wants is to not be that like decrepit one. He wants to be the cool one, but he keeps getting sent back. So that was sort of the crazy beginning of what I remember of all this. But I remember there being continuity. I remember there being this like big sci-fi epic aspect to it because it was different planets, their vehicles. And then I remember playing with, I didn't have it, but their car, their tank.
The Thunder Tank.
The Thunder Tank that Panthro would drive. And then, of course, it was the base and everything else. But I my association with Thundercats was the show, but really wanting all of the toys. It was the same deal with Voltron. And, I can't imagine what our parents went through at that point, looking at the cost of these toys, especially in 80s dollars, and be like, dear Lord, they want all of them, don't they? And there we were as kids, like, yep, I want this one, this one, this one, and this one, because I got to have the whole base. Then I got to have the whole crew, but didn't get it. Genius. Absolute genius marketing, absolute genius appealing to our little developing brains and getting us to want to buy every single toy conceivable. But they were also cool toys. The more I watched it as I got a little older, as it was in reruns and syndication, I started seeing some other themes in it too, where I was like, are the writers like, are they going for some weird like other tendencies here? I don't know what they were trying. Like, were there supposed to be like random romances between the characters that would come and go?
There was like nudges here and there.
It seemed like they were. It seemed like from hindsight they were like one large polycule. and there was going to be drama in the background because they seemed to be a little bit like bitchy towards each other in random different episodes, but different characters going in different directions. And I was like, wait, why are Katara and Tiger not happy with each other today? And for some reason, those thoughts stuck with me. Like they seem to be mad at each other today. No, they're fine today. Everything is good.
Yeah, depending on the episode, there was different dynamics between the characters. I feel like I don't know if I really. I mean, I guess all the characters have a good characterization, right? They have a baseline of who they are.
Yeah, like Tiger's an architect. He's science-minded, a little shy. Panthro. Yeah, they all have their own distinct personalities.
Right. I think they're fairly consistent, but I could tell from rewatching the first season, like there are some times where the characters seem like they're out of character for whatever reason.
They're probably possessed. They did a lot of possessing.
Yes,
oh my god, so many possessing.
Yes,
so many possessions. But Keith, same thing that with you. I only remember the storylines from the first season, and I don't know what happened. Did it not air where we were? Like, had I because I would have continued watching it because I was definitely watching afternoon cartoons.
Well, it went on for 4 years, so like
I think we might have aged out a little bit too.
Maybe. I saw all of it in its first run. I remember them going back to Thundera and getting really weird. And there's a gyroscope that makes gravity. Sure, let's ignore science.
Hold on. So, just so I'm clear, that's where you got off the bus, okay? The gyroscope that generates gravity.
No, it wasn't that. It was them breathing in space. Even as a kid, I was like, I don't know about this. And then
Silverhawks made it okay. So I think once you got to Silverhawks, and then they figured no one was complaining. Bill Nye was not actually up in arms. They said, you know what? Hey, let's just go across all our properties.
I gotta throw some shade at Kevin also, because if you made it to season 2, one of the Lunatics, his weapon is like a gravity gun, basically.
Yes, right? Yes, it is.
So, what's the story there? You're all right with that, but not okay with the thunder gyroscope or whatever the stupid name they called it.
I think it was just the Great Gyroscope. I don't even know if there was a name. Tugboat's gravity carbine was cool.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
I think if it's cool, it's okay.
You know what? I accept that explanation.
Can we get back to Mumra for a second?
Yes. Can I also say that should be the rule for 80s cartoons? If it's cool, it's okay. Because otherwise,
that
makes sense.
None of this holds together otherwise. But yes, please, let's get back to Mumra. I have other thoughts too about him.
So one thing I appreciated and still do appreciate about him is that he knows he's evil. Like Megatron and other people, other villains, a lot of villains think they're in the right, but he literally prays to the ancient spirits of evil. He seeks out things that make him more evil, however you would quantify that. And I like the simplicity and just the terribleness of that.
Devoted dog owner, though.
He got so much more sympathetic when he got Marmot.
Yep.
I was like, oh, he's just a nice old man.
Yep.
And if you think from his point of view, he had this whole planet under his rule. He slept a lot, great life. And then these freaking Thundercats show up and ruin his slumber. I kind of see why he's upset at them being there.
I love how we refer to them as like the felines.
Yeah.
You wonder, like, did the writer have an issue with cat? Like, did one writer not like cats and the other one really did? And this is how they formed Thundercats.
Kevin, I think your take on it is pretty spot on. I mean, it is. Here it is, your retirement plan. You're fine, you're comfortable, and then these upstart kids are on your lawn,
right.
and pretty noisy, cantankerous, going out there, doing good, whatever that is. I mean, Come on, why should you stand for that?
Do we think Mumra would care so much if it wasn't for the fact he was inundated and bothered by the 3 mutants all the time? Because I feel like if there was no mutants, the Thundercats really probably wouldn't have bothered Mumra as much as they do. Because he has to keep listening to them complain about the Thundercats, and they keep wanting to destroy them. And so he seems like, yep, I'm going to destroy them too. But if they weren't around, I think he would get more peace than he had.
I think so, but I think in one of the episodes, what was the line? It was something about the Thundercats romp and play unmolested on my planet.
Oh no!
And I think that just emphasizes his whole perspective on that.
Oh, what word choice?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Imagine if Jaga had decided clothes were not necessary on Third Earth.
Oh my god.
Well, that's what confused me with the clothes, is that so they didn't initially have any, but in the later seasons, they show other refugees. They show some peasants or commoners, even Bengali and Linkso and Pumaira. They're all wearing clothes. So is it just the nobility that's naked? I've always wondered that.
No, Kevin, I think you're the only one who's probably seen the entire show. I mean,
I saw it in its original form back in the 80s, and then in the last week and a half, I did a very intensive rewatch. So
okay, so unless anyone else here speaks otherwise, where did the other Thundercats come from? Because I be perfectly honest, I don't know if I've ever seen that season. I'm like Keith, I loved it growing up. I probably saw only the first season, and I didn't have time to watch the second season.
I crammed the hell out of it for this also.
Okay, so where do the other Thundercats come from? Anyone feel free to chime in, but I'll start with you, Kevin.
As far as I remember, because I watched so much so quickly, they were in an escape pod that landed on an island on Third Earth. So they were there the whole time, just like no one knew about it.
With like 2 Robert burbles.
Yeah.
That's it's very like Superman and Supergirl type of thing. They landed in
the whole planet blowing up, them being refugees on Earth, them needing Thundrillium and being weakened by Thundranium is very Superman-esque in general. I always wondered if they like cribbed that origin from Superman.
I mean, let's just be honest. It's got a little bit of everything in there.
That's true. That's true.
I think we've touched on some Battlestar Galactica.
Mandora, Evil Chaser. There's a whole
exactly. Some Superman, because again, we're gonna name the elements after the planet itself. It's like us having something called, I don't know, like terranium.
Yeah.
So in some far future, those humans are negatively affected by terranium. The radioactive ore from their home planet, which was destroyed.
Didn't Battlestar Galactica 84 have the same cycles that Mandora did? Am I remembering that?
I think you may be right.
Isn't that, yeah. So they really just like, oh, what's on TV? All right, let's do a little bit of this, a little bit of that.
It's a universal archetype, Kevin. There's not.
I'm sorry.
As the great JMS would say.
Yeah.
Long may he live.
Yeah.
The archetype was that they were all on the same drugs in the 80s. They all came up with crazy fever dreams.
Yeah. Is it the same drugs that Tiger was on in
the
anti-drug episode?
The plant woman?
Where she's
right, the plant woman, yes.
Silky, the sexy alien plant lady who's actually Mumra, because 90% of everyone on Third Earth is Mumra, actually.
Yep.
Well, I mean, so
it's his planet. It's his planet.
Well,
that's true.
No, and then I'd actually watched a YouTube video essay, and they discussed this. And to Kevin's point, Mumra's the only actual Earthling. He's the only one from the planet. I mean, so if you want to look at it, he has the right to be whoever he wants because he is the last. Everybody else is an interloper.
Wait, are Thunderians colonizers? Is that what I'm getting from this?
There are many themes. I wasn't going to go there. We have, it's, again, with one could argue the fact that, from their home planet, they were in their native states of undress, and then they come over with their strange ways and they adopt clothes. I mean,
were they noble savages then?
Well, there's a lot, and they're trying to domesticate, the robo-bills. There's a lot going on here. Some of it overt, some of it very subtle. But I think it all comes from the same place.
That's the nobility. Aren't they the nobility of the planet that they are?
They are, because the new Thundercats who showed up in this later seasons, they were made honorary Thundercats because they weren't actually the nobility. So
they also made an interesting comment too. Actually, when Pumaira, Linkso, and Bengali are invited to Cat's Lair, they're like, oh, we can go into Cat's Lair, because they were expecting that Cat's Lair is for the nobility, as it was on Thundera, and the line was like, no, everyone is welcome, it's fine. So I was like, oh, they threw in that little bit of spicy sauce to give you the inside view into what it was like on Thundera.
The whole form of government is like really suspect and I guess medieval, feudal.
Yeah.
They in one of the later episodes, they admitted that on Old Thundera, they had indentured servitude. That's not cool. Like, Jaga's running around while there's people who are indentured servitude on his planet. That's really bad.
I'm surprised they never took the Brute Men and like did that with them, because they probably would have been happy to be indentured servants.
Well, the mutants.
Snarf,
The mutants tried to enslave
makes
everyone.
people as well.
True.
There's a whole other discussion we can have there. I mean, so above
Yeah.
and beyond, indentured servants, you also have a subordinate class, a
Yes.
separate genetic offshoot that can only serve the dominant class. There's a lot to unpack here. There's a lot.
There is a lot. The Snarfs, when I was a kid, I always thought the Snarf was kind of like an Orko character, kind of funny, a little useless. But rewatching it, he saves the day so many different times.
Yeah.
He's literally the Wesley Crusher before Wesley Crusher.
Yeah. He becomes Snarfra, which
Damn
is
right.
amazing.
The ever living, and defeats Mumra.
Yeah, he just throws Mumra around like a rag doll. It's
Smacks
amazing.
him with his tail.
And he was originally employed as a nanny for Lionel. That's like real. That's like some like job elevation right there.
Can I just say that 26 minutes into the podcast, and we've sympathized more with Mumra and basically torn down the heroic aspects of the Thundercats.
Well,
You've assembled quite a group, James. Quite a group.
We didn't destroy the Thundercats as much as Jaga did, and
Damn
his
right.
crimes.
Let's get into that, Jack.
Okay, I'm just gonna put this out there. Jaga has got the best theme ever. I mean, there are some times when I'm feeling pensive, and I say, you know what? I'll just call up the Jaga theme.
So
and you know what?
inspirational.
I am in the zone. Okay.
Oh,
I'm just putting that out there.
That's so
It
much
sounds
better
good.
than for a while. I had this tune in my head, and I'd like whistle it and walk around
Is it Snarf's theme?
for years, and it was Snarf's theme.
Yeah,
And
baby.
am I a Snarf? That's
they're
unfortunate.
They're incorruptible, so I'm going to go with
That's true.
no, since I know you well.
Yeah, they did make a point that they're completely unable to be
You
evil.
are not a hobbit, sir.
No, I'm a Boromir. We all know that.
Yes.
Oh, Boromir.
I remember that.
Yes, Jack, you remember?
Wow,
And that
wow,
quote,
those are the
oh man,
days.
if I were Boromir, I would kill myself.
And I'm like, I got Boromir in that online quiz. But the thing is, I was rewatching one of the episodes where Vulture Man, who is my favorite mutant because he's a scientist, he made a super like power serum, and at the end of this episode, they get rid of it. And my Boromir ass is like, they should have freaking kept that. Like, if I was a Thundercat, if I was Lionel, I would have kept that around and beaten everyone like around. So.
Don't they just randomly sprinkle it outside Cat's Lair too?
I think they dump it on the ground or something. Yeah.
Why would you do? Also, he designs every device with a self-destruct in it. Like, what kind of psychopath is he?
Oh, I love him for that. It's great.
Well, not to get too off tangent, because we've unpacked a lot of boxes here, so I just want to like open some of them a little bit. So,
Yeah.
Jack, why don't you finish telling us defending Jaga? You were going to start defending.
Oh, yes.
Why don't you start?
Yes,
All
there
right.
you go.
Okay. So I mean, I think part of what we've discussed is some character development, which was scant and not very forthcoming. And so, like, as we indicated, the show starts off with them leaving Thundera, and so Jag obviously sacrifices himself in that first episode. But then, as Kevin pointed out, comes back as a spirit ghost periodically. The backstory, when it's revealed, is much more complicated and not necessarily as avuncular of a character as one would think. I mean, there's no easy way to say it. He is responsible for the destruction of the planet. Okay, there.
Yeah,
it's out
on
there.
him.
It is out there. It is out there. But I will just say, in many ways, he spent the rest of his life trying to make up for it.
Do you think that's why he sacrificed himself? He's like, man, I blew up this planet. I got to do something to make up
one
for
for
that.
the team.
Yeah,
I would say it's unrelated.
Yeah, they never acknowledge his guilt in that. Like, you think Mumra would have been like, "Nice going there" or something.
Mumra would have
Even
said,
Mumra is not that much of a dick.
Yeah.
Mumra would have said, "Hey, listen, you know what? We've all been there, dude. We've all been there."
Yeah.
So,
How do you feel about a partnership?
Yeah, well, exactly. It's never too late, even from the afterlife. So I think the idea of Jaga is what's so endearing. I mean, let's just be honest. He's
An old white man telling you what to do all the time?
Well, it's just about to say. I mean, you literally take Obi-Wan Kenobi and you slap some cat ears on him, and then you are good to go.
I think he's a little more useful than Obi-Wan.
Well, because Obi-Wan is, again, he's obviously he's the mentor, but Obi-Wan also had a little bit of the trickster in him because he wanted Luke to figure it out, yada, 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 blah, blah,
Yeah.
blah. Jaga was all about, no, you know what? You are the leader of the Thundercats. You are meant for great things. You have, and again, this kind of goes back into monarchies. This is your birthright.
Yeah.
And again, a lot to unpack there. Not a pluralistic democracy, but it one could almost look from another vantage point. Jaga was essentially not only responsible for the destruction of Thundera, but also trying to. It was almost a symbol of all of the things that was wrong with Thundera to begin with.
Wow.
And if you if the show were made today, and
yes,
I'm not talking about the 2011 remake, we can
which they did dive into that a little bit, actually.
Well, exactly my point. But I don't think they dove into it enough. You really want to demonstrate that there should have been greater tension between Jaga and Lion-O, and really trying to have him come into his own. And that, the 80s. We weren't there as a people, but that's where you go.
Can we acknowledge the fact that like Jaga buries the Sword of Plundar inside of Thundera, thinking and then it's going to be fine, and then it slowly works its way out, which causes the blowing up of the planet. And that's not even the most powerful sword in the show.
Yeah.
Yes. The Sword of Omens, basically, I think one writer said it in one of the things I was watching YouTube, basically did whatever they needed.
In an episode, it leaves the room and someone's like, oh, Lionel didn't call the Sword of Omens. And Panther was basically like, well, the sword doesn't seem to care.
I counted 31 separate uses in my rewatch of it.
I have a list. I have notes.
I am sure that, I have 31 here, but I'm sure I missed many. But that's like 31 different uses out of 130 episodes. So every like 4 episodes they're coming up with new things.
Is probably the most powerful weapon in all of, well, maybe not all of pop culture, but all of cartoons, right?
Yeah.
It's like
yes.
It could do more than the Matrix.
Oh,
yeah, right?
Absolutely.
So that's the thing. It is the most. I think it's more powerful than the what's He-Man's sword? Is that just the Master Sword?
Yeah, but that's definitely more powerful.
It doesn't even do anything, does it?
It can channel He-Man. It channels the power of Grayskull to turn him into He-Man, and then He-Man can use that to turn. He basically turns things into more Jack versions.
That's right. It's Roid. It's a Roid ray.
The 80s.
Yeah. But like for the show, I liked all the different. So I think the show started my love of like swords, medieval arms, and stuff like that. And I liked that they had so many different ones.
Yeah, like Hachiman.
Hachiman's Thunder Cutter. They had Excalibur, the Sword of Plundar, the Rat's Eyes, and then some other stuff. And there seems to be a hierarchy there. So in the Excalibur episode, Excalibur wins versus the Sword of Omens, which is really weird on a show about the Thundercats. It freaking impales it and it's dead.
I remember that.
Well, the Sword of Omens has a disadvantage, though, because it can't fight anything that's good, basically, right?
Correct. But it was putting up a little bit of a fight. I like that sentient swords just go in the air and fight for themselves. It's a really like effort-saving thing that they just do for you. And like there was an episode with it's the Sword of Omens versus the Thunder Cutter, which is Hachiman's, and they refuse to fight.
Yep,
and it's like
both of them. Yeah,
it's a good thing the swords are smarter than their users, which is like I guess a good technology to have in your sword.
Can I just say, like, I was like, when I'm watching the Hachiman episode, I'm like, I don't know if this is
you can't do that anymore. You can't do the snowman stuff either because his accent was really bad.
Yes,
also,
thank you. Yes, the snowman. I was like, this is definitely not okay.
To be fair,
now.
They only had like 6 voice actors for.
What is up with that, dude? Hire more people.
They did finally in the later seasons. They added one more girl.
Every time Monkeyan speaks, I'm like, okay, Tiger, whatever. Shut up, Tiger.
Yeah. I think for the first 60 episodes, every female voice was all her. Lynn Lipton. Yep. Chitara's voice doing it. Like, it's really obvious, too. Like, Mandora is just slowed down Chitara.
She did a pretty good job with Wily Kit, though.
She did. I heard that's her natural speaking voice, but she did a great job, so.
Yeah, I mean, those things, pointing them out, and they would not do that today.
No.
They wouldn't be able to, and they wouldn't do that today. But
And I think it's great that they had like Hachi Man. That was the first time I ever heard of like Bushido or the code of that, or even saw samurais. I was like, what, 6, maybe 7?
You got to give the Thundercats some credit for like the what their code was,
Yeah.
and what they kept on promoting to kids. Even though they're trying to be like ruthlessly capitalistic and get you to buy billions of dollars worth of toys, they're also like, here are the Thundercats and their credo, and it was very, very like clear morality play. And so you knew who the good guys were supposed to be, and you knew what their ideals were. So there wasn't any question about that.
Well, I guess
But-
that's why they never have like Lion-O just straight up behead or stab, or
No.
the sword's rarely used as a sword.
Yeah,
It just shoots lasers most of the time.
Yeah.
Or signals for the rest of the team to
Yeah.
to kind of
Signals
come
for the
and
rest
make a
of the
giant
team.
sword or something. Yeah.
Which also works to restore any malady that has ever occurred to a Thundercat. Frozen, no problem. Turned really
Yeah.
small, turned really big.
Into a
under
rock,
mind
no
control.
problem. Yeah.
Don't worry about it.
It also flies him into interstellar space. It makes it rain, literally. It unfreezes frozen crops. It
I
creates
didn't see the Strip Club Thundercats episode.
Yeah,
What
yeah.
number was
it's a translator for hieroglyphics. It uses a pole vault, which is like petty and minor, but my
Yes,
favorite little one.
that's in
it
my
pushes
notes.
a-
I like that one, yeah.
yeah, it pushes a switch on the train that.
Yes, the bash button.
Yeah, it's like, okay, it's really funny.
It's insane.
It's the most powerful thing besides Excalibur, but and it's used for these little tiny stupid things. I love it.
And it can survive being almost thrown into a black
Yes.
hole and be
Yeah.
retrieved.
And it was broken. I think
Yes.
I counted 4 times. The first time
The
was
fire guy, the creature had to reforge it. Who turned out
Right.
to be evil.
And
But, I mean,
yeah,
I think Thundercats figured out something very early on that has been kind of replicated in various other media later on. The reforging, and I'm gonna, maybe Tolkien was, the first one to figure this out. The reforging of a blade is as dramatic as the blade itself. And so you just absolutely need to have it happen. Otherwise, you're just shortchanging your audience.
yeah. And the first 2 times it broke, I thought were like good storytelling elements. I think he was
Epic,
fighting
yeah.
Tigra, and the sword's like, nope, and broke.
Yeah.
And then the next time is the greatest introduction of one of the Lunatics, where
That was Tugmug, right? That
just
was
takes it
jarring.
and just snaps it. It's
like
like
a twig.
we're in a new paradigm of villainry here. It's amazing. But yes, then the reforging. Well, one, I think that's the only thing Bengali ever did in any episode.
He's a blacksmith, Kevin.
Kind of useless. I think he had like 10 lines ever. I don't know. He's
And they were too
underserved
many.
character. Yeah.
I mean, listen. I mean, he was designed so that you could use a repainted tiger.
It's not a
figure
repaint.
and sell,
As far as I remember, I don't think that toy was a repaint. I thought they had its own mold.
Really?
Well, that's-
did it?
I
Okay,
watched,
very impressive.
like, a
and that's
YouTube
why
video.
Rankin and Bass is no more.
Exactly.
I mean, maybe.
Someone wasn't keeping track of, hey, what do you mean you're coming out with a whole new mold? I mean, slap some different color paint on that, give him a new name, and let's call it a day.
Well, I mean, to be fair to Thundercats versus our conversation about Transformers, it's when they decided to do the second season, introduce new Thundercats. It's not like they slaughtered Lion-O.
That's true. Oh my god.
They weren't like, okay, let's kill all of the original Thundercats and for these new Thundercats. They just added on to their
Right.
roster.
Which is a better way to go about that, I'd say.
It's also a beautiful show, though. Like, the music is really good, even though there's not enough voice actors. Like, what's there is really good. And some
Yep.
of the art, especially
It's very good.
the cutscenes that they reuse with, like, Lion-O holding the sword and stuff, like, it's really good.
No, I think, and the opening is really
Yeah,
good too. The opening that's some of the best animation. I mean, I know it's the opening, so they probably spent more
It's
money
still
for it,
nice,
but it's
though.
really beautiful.
Yeah.
Whereas like a lot of others have like clips and stuff or aren't as good. The opening, I think, really set the tone for the whole thing.
So just kind of going back to like the Sword of Omens and the thing that happens in every episode, even sometimes I think it doesn't need to happen, but it happens when Lionel summons them with the sword, which I think happens every episode. You guys can correct me since you.
I think
rewatched
it
the
does
series,
happen
but
every
I think-
episode.
yeah, even if I think Lionel's got it, somehow he calls everybody.
Half the time they get there and he's done anyway, and they're like, oh, hi.
I mean, that's a double-edged thing too. You're like calling out that you need help, and then everyone who's a villain can see that. Like,
True.
it's like kind of maybe they should have just had a radio. I don't know. Maybe
Are the Thundercats compelled to come, or they come because their leader's in trouble? I never understood. Like, does the sword like saying they have to drop whatever they're doing, jump in the thunder attack, and go?
I don't think it makes them come, but
They do that though. They do drop everything and then leave.
Yeah, well, their eyes and then ears for Linkso, Clo.
Yeah,
and like the power of the Thundercats is somehow in some way linked to the Eye of Thundera in some mystic manner. Maybe they know it's in their best interest to go help that.
What was the deal when he used the sword and like both sent up the symbol, which I call like the Thundercats bat
signal? Yeah,
That's
yeah.
like what it is. But also, like, what was with like the puma that came out of it too?
So the puma only happened in, I think, one episode, right at the last episode, where it comes out and does stuff. Normally, it would just go up and on the clouds or whatever, or through a mountain or wherever it needed to go. But I think it's only the last episode where the puma comes out and like is a screen wipe for fixing everything on Thundera.
Yeah, the last two episodes are really weird. I mean, it feels like they were told maybe the day before, because, I mean, they have a bounty hunter show up in a circus train, somehow manages to round up every single bad guy ever immediately, except for Mumra and Mahmud. Yeah. And then, you know, now that we're done, the Ancient Spirits are like, oh shit, Mumra, you got a day. And they're like, we're not kidding around. We're going to throw your mutt into, like, the ether, Superman style, with the glass where he's imprisoned and thrown into nothingness. And then Mumra's like, oh, okay.
I mean, at least they had a finale.
That's true,
right?
It isn't a distinctive end, which is nice. I wasn't aware that they had. I couldn't remember if it was a distinct end or just kind of faded out. But it's nice that they had that.
It was funny rewatching that ending. I couldn't help but realize it was very. Here's another way it was 80s. That really contrasts to today in terms of messaging in TV shows. It was a super pro environmental message.
So many different episodes were super environmental, which is great.
The micro one with the little people where they're like stepping on them by accident.
Oh yeah,
that was amazing. Which I think was revisited in the 2011 series with the little people who experience time different.
Yes, yeah, the like petal flower people.
Yeah, but the environmental message was like really on point. I mean, it shows that they had. I think they had a psychologist or a child. Whatever, actually overview the script for every episode. And I think it shows. I can't think of any other show that was like as moral based. I don't think did Transformers?
Transformers definitely had a moral episode. It was the one where the girl falls in love with Paraglide and then he smacks her in the face and she still loves him. It's fine when a 20-foot robot smacks a woman in the face who's made of flesh and blood, right?
We're getting off topic here. We're getting off topic.
Oh, sorry. My bad.
There needs to be a study of how kids of the 80s turned out and what their primary shows were. I want to see correlation or causation for how he turned out, because there's something there with that. But I loved the fact that there was that messaging, but was also unapologetic with it. It was like, no, we're going to say like we have our things like what we're about, the environment, this and everything else, and Mumra's the opposite end of that. And there was no like, well, wait a second, like if a show like that is going to air today, you're going to get some crazies. You're going to get some crazies going, they're trying to indoctrinate them into the conspiracy to save the planet from climate change. You'd be like, apparently that wasn't a thing in the 80s. People were just like, well, we had acid rain, we fought back against it and fixed it.
It went away.
And you could do things like that. Now it's like, no. Even something like, if they said like loyalty or truth, it'd be like, but what's truth? Is it really true? And you get into a whole, parents should be going crazy in their letter writing campaigns or their Facebook campaigns, or whatever it would be. And you'd be like, yeah, it was sort of simpler back then. But there was also a code, to be fair. There were codes that they had to sort of uphold at that point for broadcast television.
Yes, there was legislation about it because I guess everyone in the 80s was crazy. I mean, they had like Satanic Panic back then and everything. So I think the show is a benefit for that. I think it worked out well.
It's a wild time with themes that didn't go. James, I wanted to jump into something real quick before my mind completely wanders off of it. So I was thinking back on my favorite characters. And of course, Mumra, I feel like I had the toy. Little young version of myself couldn't help but notice something about Tigra.
Oh, did you think he was gay?
I totally think he
I
was
thought
gay.
he was gay as well. Yeah.
Okay, I'm not the only
I
one.
didn't. I don't know what
Is it
that
the whip?
was. It
I
was
didn't have
not. It
the
was just.
language for it as a kid at that age. But as it went into syndication and I was like 10, 11, 12 and, figuring some things out for myself, all of a sudden I'm like, there's something different about him. And,
He was born that way.
he was born that way, but even the descriptions of him, I love how like the hilarious. I'm like, oh my god, there's a code in there. There's totally a code. Like, okay, this may be a stretch about him like turning invisible, and that can be like being closeted, fine, but that was a vibe I got. But he's described in various like fandom pages as like, well, he's very neat. It repeated itself across multiple websites. I was like, either they're copying and pasting or like, oh my god, that's totally, because that's like the Odd Couple queer coding. Totally, that's like the neat one was always like, oh, he's the gay one. He's the gay because he cleans stuff up. Oh, he could garden. The rest of them, he like would restore the garden. So it'd be like, oh, okay. And then there's like, oh, and he has the whip, which you look at that whip and you're just like, oh god, yeah, there's something to that. I mean, swords in the 80s were also highly phallic. I don't know what it was. They were always growing, glowing swords. Why did they always grow? And why were they held by prepubescent mind in the body of an adult who has a sword that grows?
Interesting choice, yeah.
Is
To
there
be
a
fair,
metaphor
John,
there?
the swords only grow when the holder gets excited, so I don't think it's that phallic.
It's like, wow, wait a second. But there was Tigra, always like the level-headed one, but who couldn't quite be in command, but who's very clearly the second in command.
I don't
That's
know.
like,
In the reboot, there's definitely more of that because it's his brother. But in the original, they're pretty devoted to like the status quo of Lionel's the chosen one, and we all better get on board with it.
Yeah, but he's really, I mean, mind powers, the constant illusion around that.
Yeah,
but
his clan has those powers
it's
apparently.
strain for him to maintain the illusion of who he is.
Oh, yeah.
And just like a total voice where I'm like, yeah, there's definitely something he's hiding there. But I think for some reason the neat part got me where I had to start laughing. I was like, wait a second, is that the vibe I was getting the whole time?
Can you imagine going to a character meeting and everyone gets handed their sheets of like characters' core values, and Tiger gets his, and it's like neat.
He is, apparently, I mean, they do like refer to his integrity a whole lot. So it's like, I guess his job was to like keep everybody on point. It's like, hey, wait a second, Lionel, you're going a little off script because you're actually sort of an idiot half the time. So,
I mean, he's mentally 12 for the first, like half.
Yeah. Doesn't he have to like?
Yeah, the anointment trials, which I thought was. I liked that series. It made a lot of sense. He has to remind people. He has to overcome all the other Thundercats without the sword to show that he's worthy of being the Lord of. Like, I don't know what happens if he fails.
It's a nice little cross-training episode because he has to do a little bit of what everybody else does.
Yeah, and it shows that he's actually competent and, it's not representational government, but he's fit to lead. He has to outrun Chitara, and he goes about it smartly. He takes a shortcut. He realizes it's not about speed; it's about endurance, and actually wins. I thought those were like really great foundational character episodes.
I also like at the end of the race, he's talking to Chitara, and he's like, "How did I win?" He's still amazed that he won. Also,
the anointment thing started probably on Thundera, which is a much safer planet to do it when you don't have like villainous groups trying to kill you constantly. And also
like mutants of Plundar, which it took me until I am this many years old to realize, Plunder.
I liked at the end of the anointment trials where he has to defeat his greatest foe single-handedly. So he has to defeat Mumra. It probably would have been easier on Thundera, where like hopefully the greatest foes were like
a swimming pool or something.
Yeah. Well, I was going to say like solve hunger or solve poverty, something useful for society. But I thought it was great that he had to overcome those and actually become the leader that he's promised to be. So
yeah. I agree with you. I liked that whole series. I thought it was a great touch, and again, continuity and character development was a good chunk of what that was about. But I don't know why. Maybe when we watched it, and I don't know when you guys rewatched it. When I was watching on Hulu,
They're not next to each other. Yeah.
Yeah, what the
I
heck? Was
checked
that
the
how it
air
was
dates and
aired?
it
Or was...
said it was aired that way. So I don't remember them being separated, but that was a long time ago.
Yeah, when I was
Yeah.
reading,
Yeah,
so there were some notes about that, about how it was screwed up in the airing, and they keep it like
Oh, okay.
authentic on Hulu. It's like, so yeah,
Oh, okay.
somebody screwed up. It's very like Firefly esque. Like, whoops, we don't care about
Yeah.
that
Yeah,
order.
yeah.
Right there, the episode titles, right
Oh yeah,
there.
there's like 5 or 6 episodes between each one of them, which is kind of
Yep.
crazy. I imagine that they made a mini movie out of it on some VHS somewhere, but
Probably.
All right, so John, you went in this right direction, which is where I wanted to go anyway. But I want to say, like, maybe this show, from what we discussed, I think is pretty progressive in some of the ideas it was trying to do story
yes.
wise. So it's not out of the realm of possibility that Tiger was or is meant to be gay or
Well,
represented.
one of the producers and then also Chitara's voice actress said that she was very happy to do the voices because Chitara was such a strong female character who is equal to everyone, which wasn't always the case at the time. So yeah, I think that supports the fact that it was pretty progressive.
Yeah, absolutely. So I guess we should go around. John, I don't know if he was your favorite character, but we could talk about our favorite characters because we really haven't talked about the Thundercats
Well, sure.
individually.
Since John opened up the door for diversity, I think every child of color who watched the Thundercats just automatically looked at Panther and said, "All right, well, he's black." And
Even
I
his
was
music.
wondering, yeah.
no. I mean, it's. I mean, you just watch and you're like, yeah, all right. There are the other Thundercats, and then there's the black guy.
But Jack, I'm going to say something. Like I'm not black, but Panther is my favorite Thundercat.
Panther
cool.
Also,
kicks ass.
just to say,
He's
like,
cool.
like, and I don't know if it's because like I also grew up with martial art movies because black, Panther being black, it didn't cross my mind so much as Panther was cool. He's a combat martial arts, and an engineer, and like he like built everything. Him and the Burbals basically built. I mean, I know Tiger designed it, but him and the Burbals built
Tiger's
everything
too
together.
neat to get his hands dirty building.
exactly.
But Jack, I cut you off. I'm sorry. You go.
No.
I just wanted to throw it that he's my favorite.
And again, it was, I think to John's point, never actually said, because obviously he's part of like, the Thunderen elites, but the bass in the voice and just okay, well, here we go. He's the one who is building everything. Okay, I get it. He's an engineer, but another word for engineer is the mechanic. And so that's.
Now,
I mean, that's
was
out
he
there.
your favorite?
Not particularly. It's maybe on one level it was almost kind of like, is he supposed to be my favorite? But I liked him. I liked what he represented. Honestly, I think probably Tigra was my favorite because, I appreciated the fact that he in many ways reminded me of Mr. Spock. And
okay.
just had that clarity of thought and idea.
Reserved.
Exactly. Very, methodical. He was an architect. I had wanted to be an architect when I was younger. I mean, there was just a lot there that I'm like, wow, this guy's kind of got it all together.
Well, like I said, Panther is my favorite. John, you kind of, talked about Tiger, but John, just to clarify, is Tiger your favorite, or you just wanted to make sort of that point about Tiger?
Actually, when it came to the toys, I liked Tiger a lot because I thought it was very cool. I liked the whip, the fact that he was sort of like a ranged fighter, and the invisibility was very cool. I remember liking him a lot. I just don't remember having a specific favorite outside the typical like kids thing of like everybody wants to be the leader, just like
Right.
Voltron. You wanted to be the head. You wanted to be the one with a sword. But I remember really liking him, and I'm gonna say this. Looking back, I think I thought he was the hot one.
That's fine. I mean, that's what Chitara was for a lot of people.
I'm not sure how much of that was like me later on or back then. I'm like, yeah, maybe they were coding that in. And Jack, to your point about Panthro, I always got a sense as a kid that he was ostensibly the black one, if you will. But my relation to him as a character was also I saw that and there was something to that, about it because I got the sense that they were trying to actually represent different. They were trying to be real diverse in the show, even though it was anthropomorphized cats. I always had that vibe, and I was like, "Cool, this is one." But then at the same time, Panthro, his voice and something about the drawing of his face always reminded me of my uncle. So I had two direct associations with Panthro. And then for like years after that, for some reason, I always, when I would run into my uncle, I would think in the back of my mind, he has like a giant cat tank. Like he must. Because he was an auto repair and had a collision.
Oh, okay.
In my head, like between the voice, the face, and the fact that he worked on cars, like there was my little kid irrational mind, like he secretly has like some really cool car that can do magic things. Like I was obsessed with it for a while, and that was Panthro for me. But yeah, I think they were really trying to do something on a gun, and that was actually very common. I mean, the show was illustrated in Japan, if I'm correct.
Yes, it was.
That's what they paid for. So there was a lot of shows that had a lot of subtext to them that I feel like the animators and the writers in different ways were trying to get through. And I definitely got a vibe from Thundercats. There was more than meets the eye.
Hey now.
Stepping on toes there.
So Kevin, I'm going to obviously save you for last. So Keith, who is your favorite Thundercat?
It was on when I was, between 5 and 8, so there wasn't a lot of advanced thinking going on there. It was like, hey,
was it like Wile E. Cat?
No, not Wile E. Cat, certainly. I enjoyed Chitara being on screen because, again, as a Transformers guy, like I was being starved for any females on screen. But no, Panthro was my guy because like I loved machines. So like Transformers I loved, but the Thunder Tank was freaking awesome. So like he built and maintained the Thunder Tank. He was the one who got to drive the Thunder Tank primarily. His voice was so much different than anyone else's voice. Yeah, so bassy and so much different than everyone else's voice on the show. And even his theme song, like they're all good, but his has got like a little extra something. I don't know. I always like Panthro.
His theme song and the Thunder Tank theme song are my two personal themes.
They're so good.
They are so good. Yes, they are. And also, the Thunder Tank also seemed like it gained extra abilities as the show went on. Also, like the Sword of Omens, at some point it became a submarine. I was like, it can do this as well.
Well, I like whenever they're near like a mountain and they're supposed to like go around something. Panther's
just go through it.
Panther's like, yeah, no problem, and then he just plows through the mountain with the Thunder Tank.
What was the outtake? That I remember 20 years ago when we were all like
the blasted Samo flange.
Right,
yes, the Samo flange. They did that in the reboot too.
Oh, really? That's great.
Yeah.
What was the Samo flange? Like, and everybody's like, oh my god, he cursed. It's like, well, an outtake he certainly did.
And also, just to go back to the impossible things, I think when it was underwater and they had to leave the Thunder Tank to go underwater, I don't think they had any breathing apparatus.
Or in space. They don't care about space either.
I mean, it's really handy that you don't have to breathe. So
yeah, and they can leave the Thunder Tank without water going into the Thunder Tank.
I never thought about that.
It's positively charged in there, I guess. I don't know.
I mean, when you have a mystic sword, why not just ask it to do that?
Exactly. In for a penny, in for a pound. I mean, you just reach a point where it's just like, just keep going.
Yeah.
All right, Kevin, your favorite Thundercat.
So my favorite Thundercat was, I'm basic. It was Lino. He had the sword.
Ooh.
I know. But
I never thought you were sheeple.
but
probably secretly snarf.
Jaga was super influential, and then when they introduced the new people, I really liked Linkso. I thought his different abilities with the Braille board, which I don't know how that works. I don't know. I thought those were cool. Of the original cast, it was like Lino and then Panthro. And Chitara was its own category.
She makes me feel weird.
Yeah. Well, that was Chilla as.
Oh, lunatics.
Started early for Kevin.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Women.
I mean. So, yeah, it was in the mutants. Vultureman was my favorite because he was kind of go off and do his own thing, and was a scientist and crazy and would blow up things at a whim. I don't know if you guys had a favorite lunatic or mutant.
Just with this, I do. We should get into that too. But I just want to ask, like, I was talking about this with Jack as well. Like, how many mutants seem to appear? Like, when they crash landed on Third Earth, how many mutants were in that ship? Because, like, First, it was like just the original
Yeah,
three,
just the three.
and then like episode 6 or 7, Voltron shows up. I'm like, okay, Voltron, I guess, was there. And then at some point, they have more mutants working in Castle Plundar.
Could we assume that those ships that were attacking the original convoy maybe arrived late?
Yeah.
We will. I guess we'll have to go with that. That's enough
Or
show.
like
Yeah,
landed
I'll go with
elsewhere
that.
or something.
I mean,
taking a while to walk over. I don't know.
If you could have all the Thunderians, the 3 Thunderians on that one remote island with the burbles, and the Sword of Omens never told anyone about that. Maybe the mutants were all in different places and had to scatter to come together.
Question, because whenever there's a Thundercat, quote unquote, in danger, the sword would glow, but they weren't technically Thundercats yet.
So it was just like, oh, they're the peasants. I'm not bothering with that.
Yeah.
Worker class.
Is that sort of like not all Gallifreyans
Yes.
are Time Lords, but all Time Lords are
excellent.
Gallifreyans?
Yes, I think it's exactly that. Yeah.
Favorite mutants. I don't know. Well, we'll start with you this time, Kevin. Who is your favorite mutant? If you say Voltron,
It was
Voltron.
Right? I've always liked science and engineering and I guess crazy people. And he's the perfect confluence of all that. And he would also pair up with like Rotaro sometimes. And he was more of a free agent, which I liked. Like Slithe Monkey and Jackal Man were okay. But it was Voltron for me.
Jack, favorite
I mean,
mutant?
you got to go with Monkey because he's just like.
Ugh.
I mean, he's just like he is the precursor to an MMA bruiser, and James, I know you'd appreciate that. I mean, if you hands down, pound for pound, that's the one who you want in a fight. I mean, let's just keep it real.
He'll rip your face off.
Exactly.
I mean, he's also the only mutant what Mummer pulled aside and offered him a special
that's true.
offer.
Yeah.
John, did you have a favorite mutant?
I don't remember their names.
I mean,
Wow.
One's a monkey and he's monkey, and one's a jackal and he's jackal man. And then you have Slithe. I think it's spelled S Slithe.
I remember thinking the mutants were really lame compared to Mumra. I was like, why are we doing this?
They're
like
lackeys, yeah.
They had the other ones like Driller and
let's not forget
Rotaro and
Rotaro.
stuff,
Yeah, exactly.
Rotaro was cool, and his ancestor had the sort of Blundar, which is cool.
Yeah, true.
Yeah, Rotaro was cool. He always they had that little tension between him and Slithe.
Yeah. He's like, I'm in charge now, and Slide's like, okay.
Okay. Keith, who's your favorite mutant?
Yeah, much like John. I mean, I know their names, but I can't say I cared a lot about the mutants. But I did not like Monkey, and only because he was fine as a character, but like every time he's talked, it was just like, this is just a crappy tiger. Like, it's so obvious. I actually didn't hate Jackalman just because like he was a complete idiot. But every once in a while, he'd like fall into doing something not terrible. And there was the one time where he went off on his own. And he teamed up with, I think, Driller and somebody else.
Yes.
Gave them like a crossbow or something. I don't even know who the other person was, but like
he became his own general.
Yeah. He's like General Jacko Man, and then sadly, between the three of them, they actually almost defeated the Thundercats for a hot minute. And then like the show was like, yeah, no, you're Jacko Man, so it'll smack you right back down. And then he had to go back to Castle Plundar and like beg the other mutants to let him back in, and they kicked his shoes off and made him go get his shoes. It was the weirdest.
Oh, I don't remember that.
It was right at the end of the episode, and somebody was watching it. They were watching it through the Sword of Omens, and they just started laughing at Jackalman because the other mutants like kicked his shoes off.
Yeah.
It was really bizarre, but yeah, I guess so.
Am I remembering that there is a hint that Monkey and one of the warrior maidens were like?
Yeah, he got close with one of them. Was it Willa or the other one?
I think it was Willa, maybe.
Okay, yeah.
And it was like, I mean, they have
trees and stuff.
Yeah, they have trees in common, and maybe that's
true.
I don't he's the only one at game, though. No one else.
Again, I'm telling you. Okay.
Good point.
Much like John and Keith, I don't really think I had a favorite mutant. They were sort of lackeys to me. But I would probably I mean, I probably liked Slithe the least. He was my least favorite mutant. The other ones I thought were more interesting than Slithe because he always seemed to know.
Well, Slithe was like the most underhanded too. The other two were like good-natured idiots, basically.
Yes. Slithe was almost in it like Mumra just to be evil. Like whatever served Slithe is what he was going to do, and that was usually his self-interest. So he was in it for Slithe. So the other ones, like you said, good-natured
Yeah,
buffoonery.
but
Yeah.
Vulture-Man was definitely different. Like, he was pretty smart, but also not as mean as Slythe.
Vulture-Man seemed to have his own plans and tried to execute them the best he could, unless it stepped on Mumbo's toes or Slithe's toes. and then he was smacked down. So, so with the remaining time we have in the podcast, you probably talk about and the rest, like Wily Cat, and all the other
Wily
guest
Cat.
stars.
We could do a half an hour on Wily Cat. He's terrible.
Okay. Well, let's talk about the last.
What about Mum Rana? How about that?
That was weird.
Well, I like that. So she prays to the ancient spirits of good, but Mummers defeated her many times, which implies that evil is more powerful than good in this universe, which explains a whole bunch of like weird stuff.
Well, as the great Spaceballs said, evil will win because good is dumb.
Yeah.
I mean, how many times did Lionel rescue a villain after he rescued
Mumra
fall to his death? Yeah, like, what are you doing, man?
From the Book of Omens.
So dumb.
Also, like, Lion-O needed to be reminded to use the sword. Jaga had to appear and be like, Lion-O, use the sword!
Use that one thing you have!
Lion-O should, like, have a Memento-style tattoo telling him to use the freaking sword.
Also, did they ever clear up that did the other Thundercats realize that he's talking to Jaga?
Yes,
because sometimes they don't see him. Yeah. And they're just like...
Because somebody asked, like, who is your friend talking to? And they're like, no, it's just a space ghost.
When Captain Shriner, he's like, oh, your friend talks to himself. And they're like, oh, Jaga. Yeah, this is talking to Jaga.
But they don't see Jaga, right?
No. I think the only time they see Jaga is when he fights Groon, who is an amazing character.
Yes, I was about to get to Groon, because I think Groon... Was Groon only in that one
episode?
In a couple.
Because
he was in a couple.
Oh, is he? Okay, because what I liked is, going back to figures, John, Groon was a great figure. Like, I just remember the Groon the Destroyer figure, with not remembering his episode, but the Groon the Destroyer figure I thought was cool. But I think he's like one of the best other villains.
Yeah,
that
yes,
we don't see.
Absolutely. He's also like an evil Thunderian, which is like it's an interesting take on that. Who hates Jaga for whatever reason? Yeah, I think he was cool. I didn't know they made a toy of him. That's cool.
Yeah, he was like one of the original. I think the original.
Okay.
Batch. I mean, I forget which video I watched, but they, like, I know they obviously Thundercats was made to sell toys as well.
There's dispute about that.
Not as obviously as Transformers, though.
Well, or yeah.
Well, I was just going to say, like, in the video they said that the writers or whoever, as they were making the show, they would give the designs to the toy company, but they basically made the show not to sell the figures. That's why a lot of the figures that were made were just one-offs. Like
Mandor.
The Walrus Mandor, the Walrus Man, Hachiman, they didn't really come back that often, but they all got figures just because they were like, okay.
Yeah, the flow was from the writers to the toy people, not the other way around, which I would argue, like...
Foolish.
Transformers did it the other way.
The good way.
I don't know.
Time for new toys. Kill them all.
I didn't have many of the toys, but I thought they were pretty great. Their Battlematic action and the light up eyes. None of my other toys had that. And then James, I don't know if you remember, at one point you got me Jaga and you made a little coffin for him. And that was like one of the most special gifts I've ever gotten.
Amazing.
So
I mean, to be full for transparency, it was me and like I think Keith, we chipped in for Jaga, so I don't want to take all.
But
the
I didn't make anything. You can take all the credit.
Well, I don't want to take all the. I think we all chipped in for it, but yes, I'll take credit. I take credit for the Thunderian.
Okay.
But I won't solely. I don't want to be like George Costanza here, and it was a big salad. But
James Thunderian Undertaker.
the toys were cool, and they were bigger than all of like my GI Joes or whatever. I didn't have a lot of them.
Their scale was great, and I'd just like to go to like the level of obscurity. I mean, I had like the main cast and crew, which was very nice. My parents got me the main cast and crew, but I know they made a toy of Mongar also. Like I was like, when I was looking online, like, holy crap, they made Mongar, and they made that weird bird like chicken monster that came out of the water. I'm like, holy, why are they making this? I have no idea. But again, it's the writers gave the toy company like, here, make these things, and we'll keep writing episodes that have nothing to do with that.
Did anybody have the Thunder Tank? Because that was obviously the best toy.
I didn't.
Nice.
Oh, wow.
Am I remembering that the Cat Slayer had a laser tag type thing where you could shine a beam at something?
I don't know. I was I'm going to say my parents were very nice and generous to me, but I didn't have Cat Slayer. So I had the original crew, the original bad guys, and the Thunder Tank, which is enough. It's enough. And then, but I didn't have Cat Slayer. And I don't even know I ever saw a cat's lair aside from like YouTube videos now or on eBay. But I've never seen one in person, so I don't know. But the play sets were always impressive back then. I mean, I think all of the play sets that they made for the characters from G.I. Joe to Thundercats and Transformers, friggin' the thing transformed into a giant robot for the most part.
Yeah.
And if you were lucky enough to have the aircraft carrier, from G.I. Joe,
I was lucky enough to have the aircraft carrier, but
wow,
it was right after my parents' divorce, so balance.
Try to buy your love.
I mean,
by the way, no, I tell Grayson about that, like just because there was a toy store in Colorado. What's the name of it? Back to the 80s. They have the box. I think they may have the aircraft carrier. And I said to Grayson, I was like, this was the most opulent toy ever made. It's almost like Babylon 5, and you're talking about it, the G.I. Joe aircraft carrier. There will never be another. No one will
the last best hope for a great
of greed and capitalism. You know what I mean? It's just, and he's like, wow, really? And I was just like, an actual kind of vehicle, a vessel that can hold full-size action figures on many different areas, including
at
the planes.
Scale.
Yeah. Scale. I mean, it's just like.
So how big was the if you got upset with your friend and you want them to go down permanently, you hit him with the aircraft carrier?
I mean, it was. I mean, I put it this way: growing up, I knew no one who owned it. I mean, granted, we were not necessarily in the rich part of town, but I mean that was just pure wish fulfillment. I mean, that was like Make-A-Wish. Foundation kind of thing. So
because it was impressive, like you said, Jack, it was to scale, and it could also land the jets that the G.I. Joes had that they put out at the time.
I mean, whoever came up with that idea is either brilliant or like insane. But whichever way, I mean, that person lost their job.
I'm reading. It was 7 feet 6 inches long,
Jesus,
3 feet wide, and 3 feet tall.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
You could sleep in that as a child.
Yeah, it was. Yeah.
Which is impressive that they did that, and Fortress Maximus isn't even as big as that.
No.
Right?
Did anybody have Mum-Ra's lair or anything? Because I honestly, I didn't really know anyone that had Thundercats toys, and I never had any. So they always were kind of cool.
No, I always wanted. Towards the end, I guess when to be perfectly honest, I can't remember this for sure, but Thundercats was 85. Yeah. I probably switched from Thundercats over to Ninja Turtles. Ninja Turtles was 86.
Really? Oh, okay. I don't remember them concurrently.
But I remember my last of toys that I remember actually wanting from that time was I wanted the Mummy Mum-Ra because I actually liked that look. I thought that look was
the best.
It's creepy. Can we talk about how creepy Mum-Ra is? Always watching the Thundercats through his pool.
He doesn't have a lot to do, man.
And then having running commentary on it. It was very weird.
That's sort of like all the neighbors who have the Ring cameras and just stand glued to their screens all day long.
That's a good point. It was ahead of its time.
Do you think Mum-Ra was watching them all the time?
I do indeed. It's most evil, and he's trying to be the most evil.
Good point.
Well, how many hours in the day is he sleeping?
Good point.
But I mean, if you really, really want to sit back and see, the eventual evolution of Mum-Ra is the Ice King from Adventure Time. I mean, the personalities are just so overlapping. I mean, it's cantankerous, angry. You have nothing to do all day but sit around and.
So is Mama the Penguin or whatever that thing was?
Gunther. Well, as the show goes on, Mum-Ra gets a little goofier.
Yeah.
One, he gets a dog. And one of the later episodes, he goes, "Oh, goody, goody gumdrops."
What are we doing here, guys?
And Jack, you're 100% right. That's very much Ice King Adventure Time.
Exactly.
Oh, goody, goody gumdrops.
Maybe at some point they were just look at the crap they're getting away with Cobra Commander. Can't we do something else with Mum-Ra? Cobra Commander was pretty goofy at times too, and pretty off the wall at some point.
The amount of times he disguised himself as something and got in the Thundercats lair, they should have code words or something. How could you trust any stranger on all of Third Earth knowing Mum-Ra?
Just let them walk in all the time.
All the time. Oh, you're a Burble? Yeah, sure. Come on in. Oh, you're a random Thundercat we didn't know about? Pumra? Yeah, okay.
Seems likely.
Yeah.
Remember, open to all, right?
Yeah.
Open to all. As we come to the end of this episode, which surprisingly seems like we need to do another part of it.
We didn't even get to Snarf yet.
I don't know if we did not get to Snarf. And we barely touched on Wily Kit and Wily Cat.
Is there much to touch on though?
Well, I would like to
perfectly
say
honest.
that Wile Cat sucks. They have surfboards, which is really their only method
And
of getting
capsules.
around. Yeah. And he can't even surf properly. Wile Kit has to save him on multiple occasions while they're
Yes, it's
surfing.
true.
And his big idea one day is, let's throw all our pills at once. That's literally his only contribution ever during the entire show.
He is a child, in defense.
Well, so is Wile Kit.
Yeah, that's true.
I always thought of it as like, because they make a mention of Tigra, like his clan has these powers where he can manifest things with his mind and whatnot. So I honestly didn't have a problem too much with the fact that Wile Kit and Wile Cat were really small. I just figured like their clan doesn't grow or something. It was weird though, where one time Panther referred to them as like children or something. I was like, but Lion-O's younger than they are, so whatever, okay. But yeah, I don't like Wile Cat.
Oh wait, are they not children? Are they like?
No, they're called the junior members. They're children.
Okay, all right, thank you. I was like getting lost for a second.
Bad job, Thundercats.
Like,
bad job.
Were they just like smaller cats that I didn't realize?
They're,
like maybe
they're house cats.
Yeah, exactly.
What I mean, before we should wrap up with Snarf because obviously he's more heroic than
justice for Snarf, definitely.
Yeah, but I just want to like wrap up with saying like we've talked about Chitara, but Chitara also had like
psychic,
mind power.
yeah.
She was a little bit like Jean Grey.
Oh, definitely.
Group, which like when rewatching, I'm like, oh, like she's like, well, I wouldn't say a precursor because Jean Grey was around at that time, but they were sort of writing her in that similar direction.
Well, her visions hurt her, but they would force her to have them sometimes too, which was a little bizarre.
You have to thank Vulture Man for weaponizing her sixth sense too in an episode.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, which I thought was cool that they going to continuity. Definitely. That I was surprised that it was something that they evolved. It wasn't like she started off with these powers; she kind of developed them over the course of the series, and I was like, oh, that's pretty cool. And it's a nice addition to. I mean, she's all of them are like super powered, but she has super speed and she's psychic. I was like, oh, this is pretty good, and she's good with the bow staff. So like, she's a very impressive character on her own. So I think we touched on the top Thundercats, but I don't think we've
she was super competent, which is nice. They all had their own little specialties, which is cool. But Snarf,
Snarf. Let's get into let's end things with the person.
What should we call him by his real name?
Osbert.
Osbert. He hates it, but I mean we're calling him by his species. How do you like that, fellow humans?
Hey, he prefers it. He identifies as Snarf. Who are we to judge?
That's a good point.
Snarfer.
Yeah. Snarfer, I thought would be as annoying rewatching as Scrappy Doo.
Exactly.
But he wasn't as annoying as that.
Marginally.
The voice is rough, though.
It is rough. Was Snarf better than Orko?
I'm going to say yes.
Yeah, I'm going to say yes also.
Justice for Orko. So I will say in Masters of the Universe Revelations,
he's
really
good in that.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, and I think they truly...
Is that the Kevin Smith one?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
He was good in that, but I'm just, if we only take what was written in the 80s, I'm not discounting Master Universe Revelations, but I like that as well. I think if you took Snarf and Orko, I think Snarf did more good and did save the day more than.
Well, here's a question: did Orko ever defeat the main villain?
Yeah, did he defeat Skeletor? I'm gonna doubt it.
I'm gonna go with no.
I cannot think of a time. Again, it's been a long time since I've lived, so I'm gonna say I do not think so. But fellow listeners, if I'm wrong, we have a comment.
Crucify me in the comments.
Or as he does sometimes, Jack will message me saying, "This is the time Orko defeated Skeletor." Yeah, rewatching the series, I was like, I mean, his voice is a little annoying, and he is annoying at times. But Snarf is actually he has sagely advice. Mm-hmm. He's useful to the team.
Saves the day a lot.
Mumra, saves the day a lot. And if you put all that aside, he freaking cooks and cleans.
That's a good point.
So what do you, like? I mean, like, what else does like? They're not in the kitchen doing anything.
Also, if you threaten Lion-O, like Snarf goes into absolute fearless mode. There was at least one or two times where they're in Cat's lair and Mumra is like pretty much about to kill Lion-O.
Yeah,
and Snarf is like, "Bring it!" He's like, "You're gonna have to get me first." Like, dude, you're like a 3-foot-tall cat with no powers. What are you gonna do?
That's his nanny powers activating right there.
Yeah, I guess so.
Exactly.
Rage mode.
Did you remember seeing the female Snarf in one of the episodes? She has a very human face. It's terrifying. It's so terrifying.
Is that when they go to the planet of the Snarfs?
I think
Or the
he's
Snarf world?
It might be that, or he's remembering about one of the Snarfs. I can't remember.
I remember he made a comment that like, "Ooh, I'll get to see, this
And
female
whatever,
Snarf."
yeah. She also knitted him his tail cozy
Okay.
to keep his tail warm because he got frozen at one point.
Makes sense.
And that was on the planet of the Snarfs. Okay.
It was.
Okay, yes, yeah. I thought that was from the planet of the Snarfs. Yeah, Snarf is. Yeah, I think of all the sidekicks in the. Well, I mean, I wouldn't say all of them because it depends. It also depends on what you're consisting of, and including the list. Because Snarf is one of the more useful sidekicks of '80s cartoons, but really
better than Daniel from Transformers.
Oh my god, so much better.
Better than Daniel. But if we really expand that sphere of influence, like Brain from Inspector Gadget is probably the most useful sidekick.
True.
Well, that's the brains of the operation. Like,
yeah,
literally.
Yeah. But I don't think Brain ever directly defeated Doctor. Well, I guess indirectly he defeated.
But
Dr.
like,
Plum
Snarf straight up became mastered the ancient spirits of evil. Became Snarfra, even though he can't physically be evil.
And he was jacked. It was like he did roids. He had muscles rippling everywhere.
Oh, and here's the greatest part, and I think it says a lot about his character. He gave up that power.
Yeah, they asked him why, too.
And he's like, it's just not who I am. I am
That was a pretty amazing moment.
Yeah, I think giving up unlimited power, it says a lot about a person.
Mm-hmm.
I wouldn't do it, so...
There was one episode that stands out where they're super reckless, though. I think it's episode... My notes say 28, but I don't know. It's the one where they get shrunken. And
yes.
Snarf,
Honey, I Shrank the Thundercats, yeah.
Yeah, and they're like, rather than bring themselves back to normal size for some reason, they give Snarf the thing and make him huge, and like he has to save the day. My notes for this are, is that safe? Do they care?
My notes were Vultureman builds Wolfrat, ? Honey, I Shrank the Thundercats.
Yeah. They have some really weird episodes. But of course the sword, you just yell Thundercats ho and it puts everyone back to normal, no problem.
I mean, yeah.
Does anyone want to try and like defend Wily Cat, or are we just putting him down as the most useless character?
Do you have an effigy of him or something?
I burn him daily.
I feel like you were hurt at some point.
He sucks, man. He sucks.
Are you projecting? Did you feel like Wily Cat as a child? Are you okay?
He sucks. That's all I can say.
But there's always the ineffective character who the team still loves. I think that's also meant to appeal to kids to be like, listen.
Yes.
In reality, you're not going to wield the sword.
Yeah, true.
You don't have magic powers.
You're going to be trapped.
Right. Right. And you'll probably screw things up for the rest of the people in your life on occasion. But we still love you. A message I think that kids need to hear.
Well, that's fair, but I feel like the Thundercats direct that too often at Snarf, when if I was a member of the team, I'd be like, let's talk about Wily Cat. When has he saved us? Oh, wait, never.
I'd be like, hey, but they good. They still love him.
Well, didn't they have the creepy doll episode with, I think it was Leia, where Mumra is like, gives her a doll. It's when they have refugees. And he's like, don't tell anyone about this. And it's like a Stranger Danger episode.
Yeah, she basically smuggles it into the midst of them.
And then like he's doing evil as a little doll. No, it was a mirror wraith who was doing the evil as a little doll.
Yeah.
And it was like, kids, if an adult tells you to keep a secret, don't. Okay. It was interesting they used a whole new character instead of using Wily Cat or Kit. So
they didn't want to put that on
That's
them.
true.
Well, there was another episode where they left because they were tired of being overlooked. But it's like, you're being overlooked because you're useless. I don't know. They needed Panther needed to spank those two, or at least one of them.
The level of intensity here is fascinating.
I would have run him over with the Thunder Tank. Just saying, only Wily Cat, not Wily Kid, obviously. But you got one girl, you got to hold on to the other one for sure. It's just a numbers game at that point.
That's the part. I feel like this would be an episode 2 of this. Is also like they're Adam and Eving this whole thing. Like there are only a handful. There aren't even a dozen Thundercats left, and they're like, "Yep, we got to start a whole new civilization here." Oh boy, that's gonna be a lot of work.
Hey, we don't know what the Robert Burbles can and can't do. Who's
true?
But if they're like cats, you know what? They probably have a lot. They just like all of a sudden you have a lot of them. You don't know where they came from.
I mean, the show kind of, they just like adopted different strays here and there from places. So yeah.
It's true. You see, the show should have ended with Mumra becoming like a cat lady.
Well, he still exists in the end. They're like, he's kind of not there, and they're like, but evil still always will be around, and we have to be always vigilant for it.
What a message! Like, that's a message we need to hear.
Oh yeah, I thought it was pretty good of them. They didn't overcome it. They're like, evil's gonna exist, and as long as evil exists, Mumra exists.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah, he was very clear all the time. You cannot defeat me forever. I will be around.
Well, I think that's like we have to do a part 2, but that's like actually a perfect way to wrap up this episode. It's like the final message of the final episode.
You have to be vigilant.
Wait, it's not evil will be around forever, so don't bother? Which message are we sending?
It's ancient spirits of evil are better than ancient spirits of good.
Okay.
Well, with that, we will do this again because I would like some time to actually watch season 2 because I seem to have missed that for my entire childhood. So I'd like to watch that, and then maybe we could also talk about the relaunch.
The reboot.
Oh, I need to do a rewatch of that. I haven't seen it since it was on somehow, which is 13 years ago? Oh my god.
If you like Panthro and you like Mechanical Arms, this is the show for you.
Oh, right.
Mechanical Arms, definitely.
I think so. I think we definitely have to do it. Yes, So, listening audience, thank you for joining us for this deep dive into the classic series Thundercats. But of course, I could not do this episode with my expert panel of pop culture experts. So, thank you, Jack, for being here.
Thundercats, ho!
Thank you, John.
Well, this is a pleasure, and it was wild.
It was wild, yes.
Ho, James!
And of course, the person I definitely could not do this episode without, I think the driving force through this episode. Thank you, Kevin.
It was a pleasure being here, and I love Thundercats, and everything is awesome.
So, audience, if you have any thoughts about what we've talked about, hopefully you do. We have the Facebook group, Secret Origins of Mint Condition. You can put your comments and thoughts into when we make this post. On Instagram, it's Secret Origins MC. And if you wanted to reach out to us on email, it's secretoriginsmc@gmail.com. I thank you for listening. And I guess let's see if we can do it. So on one, we'll do Thundercats Ho together to end this episode. So, Thundercats Ho!